Following the devastating impact of Hurricane Melissa, Venezuela sent humanitarian aid to the islands of Cuba and Jamaica. The Honduran Armed Forces confirmed that they will respect the will of the people at the ballot box on November 30th. And the World Health Organization reported that 421 people died from malnutrition in the Gaza Strip, including 113 children during the year 2025. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Venezuela sent humanitarian aid to the islands of Cuba and Jamaica after the devastating impact of Hurricane Melissa, in a gesture of regional solidarity and commitment to South-South cooperation. The Bolivarian nation shipped 46 tons of food and essential supplies. The supplies that will be delivered to both Caribbean nations include more than 10,250 kilograms of food, 2,500 mattresses, and at least 9,500 medicine items, among other things, to meet the needs of those affected. In this context, the Venezuelan Foreign Minister Iván Gil recalled that this Thursday marks the 25th anniversary of the Comprehensive Cooperation Agreement between Caracas and Havana, signed by Presidents W.H.O and Fidel Castro.
El paso del huracán nos exige salir al frente.
The passage of the hurricane requires us to step up with special aid for the Republic of Cuba, Jamaica, and other countries. We are prepared precisely because of that instruction, because of that legacy and that architecture designed by our commanders, which is more relevant today than ever. While other countries focus on threats in the Caribbean to create instability and threaten peace in the region, Venezuela is taking a step forward.
And Hurricane Melissa reduced its intensity to a Category 1 storm after leaving a trail of destruction and more than 30 fatalities in the Caribbean. The most affected country is Haiti, which has reported so far 28 deaths and 10 missing persons, with people trapped by building collapses and river overflows. In Jamaica, 77% of the country is without electricity and much of the territory is cut off. Although only 8 deaths have been confirmed, Jamaican authorities warn that the death toll will rise as rescue operations continue. The hurricane made landfall in Cuba last Wednesday as a Category 3 storm, and despite its weakening, it continues to pose a threat to the Bahamas. In this context, President of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, on Thursday visited areas in the province of Holguín that were damaged by Hurricane Melissa. The head of state visited the city together with the main government authorities to promote the immediate recovery of the territory. The president recognized the efforts made by the civil defense to protect the population, which prevented the loss of human lives. He also warned that the secondary effects of the climatological phenomenon, such as residual winds, river overflows, and possible outbreaks of diseases persist, and therefore ordered that the provinces remain on high alert.
The visit to the provinces affected by the cyclone, specifically Holguín, and what we have seen is that work has been done. Good work has been done in each of the phases, but you have already been moving forward with elements of organization for the recovery phases. You are already in the recovery phase. At 12 noon, the province moved into the recovery phase, and you have already made progress, as we have seen. First, assess the damage, the situation in places that are more complicated than in the provincial capital, such as Quito, which you have described. But here we can already see that there is work and atmosphere. There is an atmosphere of organization. We can see that the residents themselves in the blocks have been clearing up part of the damage. And that is one of the first tasks, the cleanup, which is what removes the ugly traces of the hurricane's passage.
During his statements, the president also made reference to the measures that will influence the recovery of the eastern territories, including the restoration of the basic services in the area.
Gradually restoring all essential services, education and health care, which have not been interrupted but are now in a stage of returning to normal. The basic food basket, based on the guidelines provided by the food group, the economic and social body, and all the donations and aid that will now be arriving from the United Nations agencies and friendly countries that have offered to support the eastern provinces.
In other informations, the Honduran Armed Forces confirmed that they will respect the will of the people at the ballot box on November 30. The statement comes in response to the announcement of a commission to investigate allegations about the alleged involvement of an official in plans to boycott the presidential elections. Honduras Attorney General Joel Zelaya confirmed the existence of evidence of a plan to alter the election results reported by the CNE magistrate. Also, the Chief of Staff, Roosevelt Hernandez, ordered an investigation into the possible involvement of members of the institution who allegedly had links to representatives or leaders of certain political institutions with the aim of destabilizing the democratic order of the country. And the president of Honduras, Xiomara Castro, condemned a conspiracy aimed at provoking an electoral coup in the Central American nation. Through a post on social media, the Honduran president expressed, "I absolutely condemn this criminal conspiracy aimed at provoking an electoral coup, as the Attorney General of the Republic has expressed. I have instructed the armed forces to immediately investigate the participation of any active military personnel and the Minister of Foreign Affairs to denounce these facts to the international community because this is a direct threat to Honduran democracy. The same groups that violated the constitution in the 2009 coup and consummated the electoral frauds of 2013 and 2017 are now attempting to supplant the will of the people, generate chaos and hijack the popular sovereignty once again. We will defend the democracy and the will of the people with all the force of the law, guaranteeing free and transparent elections, social peace, and the unconditional respect for the rule of law and the constitutional order." And in this context, Honduras Foreign Minister Javier W.H.O announced that he will report the attempted electoral coup to the international community. In a post, W.H.O stated, "In compliance with the instructions of President Xiomara Castro, the Foreign Ministry of the Republic will immediately report this serious conspiracy that threatens the sovereign will of the Honduran people to the international community. Honduras will not allow democratic setbacks or the repetition of the dark chapters of the past. We will defend the Constitution, peace and democracy with truth and law." And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and much more. We'll be right back, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. A Brazilian federal court ruled Thursday to maintain military police presence at the Ipuita farm of the Cuiraroca indigenous territory in Carapó. The federal institution said that this precautionary measure was reactivated because on September 21st, part of the Warari and Kiowa people had the objective of recovering the farm. The indigenous people emphasized that the court's decision is illegal since before the ruling, the police were acting illegally in the area. They also denounced that during the recovery of the land, the police shot indigenous people to death. And we stay in Brazil. Supreme Court Judge Alexander de Moraes ordered Rio de Janeiro Governor Cláudio Castro to explain the police operation that left 121 people dead and 113 arrested in the northern part of the city. The judge ruled that Governor Castro must clarify and explain The police maneuver has also requested the National Human Rights Council. In this regard, Magistrate De Moraes will hold a hearing on 3rd of November, to which the governor, police officers and other persons involved in the operation must attend. The Moraes ruling is part of the claim of non-compliance with the fundamental precepts of the favelas, which monitors the problem of police lethality in Rio de Janeiro. Meanwhile, Mexico demands respect for its national sovereignty after a new attack by the United States against a suspected drug trafficking boat off the Mexican coast. The President of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, affirmed that they are seeking to resume direct coordination in maritime operations so that the Navy can detain the drug trafficking boats. The President reiterated her stance on the defense of national sovereignty and called on the United States to restore the cooperation scheme against drug trafficking in the Pacific. Sheinbaum indicated that the Mexican Secretary of the Navy and a counterpart from the U.S. Coast Guard met to review strategies and arrange meetings with the South Command and the U.S. State Department.
Today, the Secretary of the Navy is meeting with a counterpart from the U.S. Coast Guard, and a meeting is also being arranged with the Southern Command, which is responsible for these activities, and also with the Department of State. Our objective is to continue with the scheme have been working with, which has to do with information provided to the Secretary of the Navy.
In this context, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum informed that the identity of the survivor of the U.S. attack on the Mexican coast is unknown.
No, it is not known. There is no information. The Navy, as the Admiral explained to us today, must remain for 96 hours, as required by international rules, searching for any victim of the shipwreck, and it is doing so in accordance with international law.
Now we go to Venezuela. President Nicolás Maduro affirmed that the country's youth are a scientific powerhouse driving innovation despite the narratives of the Western media. During the meeting, the Venezuelan head of state emphasized that Venezuela's greatest strategic potential in terms of development is its scientific seedbed, made up of a brilliant generation of children and young people, asserting that this emerging talent represents a true weapon for building the country's future. In this context, he affirmed that there is no such thing as a Generation C in Venezuela, as this classification responds to a narrative imposed by Western international media with the purpose of categorizing and conditioning the expectations of youth through the dominance of social media. He also urged young people to remain aware and not allow themselves to be manipulated, reaffirming that they represent a generation committed to knowledge, progress, and national sovereignty.
Venezuela has the atomic bomb. You didn't know that it had the atomic bomb. The atomic bomb of Venezuela is the seeds of scientific group. These children of 14 and 15 and 16 years, they are the atomic bomb. They're the real atomic bomb of Venezuela. It is the weapon for the development of the future. 500,000 children in youth, men from 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, 16, 18 years. Here in Venezuela, there's no C generation. That is the creation of international media of the West that then want to, with the weight that they have, because they dominate social media, they dominate TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, they dominate X.
Also, the Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro urged the U.S. government to lift the economic blockade on Cuba, providing effective aid and respecting national sovereignty.
the best help is to rise the blockade, to end the blockade, and to raise all of the economical persecution measures to Cuba. That is the best help that the government of the United States can give to our brother Cuba, as was being said yesterday by the UN. 165 votes in favor. The whole humanity voted for the seizure of the torture of the people of Cuba. So if the government of the United States wants to help Cuba, as they have said today, Marco Rubio raised today all of the measures, and you will see that it is the best historical help for a people that is heroic and patriotic.
And also in Venezuela, citizens mobilized in rejection of all threats from the United States government and in defense of the Bolivarian nation. With banners in hand and a message of peace, thousands of citizens gathered to demand an end to U.S. violence against Venezuela. They also expressed their support for peace and the sovereignty of Venezuelan territory, reaffirming their commitment to defending the country's rights and values. It is worth noting that the protest also denounced the silence of the international community in the face of attempts to aggress against Venezuela. Now we have a second show break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final show break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to From the South. The World Health Organization reported that 421 people died from malnutrition in the Gaza Strip, including 113 children during the year 2025. The international organization reported that the shortage of food and drinking water is due to Israel's blockade of humanitarian aid at the Rafah border crossing. The most vulnerable people affected by the lack of food are children, the elderly, and the sick who have been left without medical care. In addition, entire families have no access to clean water, and mothers are unable to feed their children. In other news, thousands of Sahrawi residents participated in the fourth round of protests rejecting the United States initiative to grant the territory of Western Sahara to Morocco. The Sahrawis declared that they prefer to remain refugees rather than become Moroccan citizens, following Washington's statements to the United Nations Security Council, where it was proposed to transfer the autonomy of Western Sahara to the borders of Morocco, triggering massive protests in the Tindouf camps. During Donald Trump's first term in office in 2020, Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara was recognized, which remains a non-autonomous territory by the United Nations. And also, police forces in Tanzania repressed the demonstrators in the nation's capital on Thursday following the October 29th general elections. Protesters took to the streets for the second day after two of the main opposition candidates were barred from participating in the presidential elections held on Wednesday. According to Amnesty International, the protest triggered repressive actions by the police, who fired and shot tear gas at the demonstrators, leaving at least 2 people dead. The government shut down internet access, imposed a curfew, and deployed the army after the unrest began. And also in the context of the meeting held in South Korea between U.S. President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, the two countries have agreed to call off a mutual escalation in their country's trade war. In a press statement, Trump said that the agreement would remove barriers to the export of strategic and critical materials and could be renewed annually. According to the agreement reached, the United States would reduce current tariffs on Chinese imports by 10%, while Beijing also announced the suspension of reciprocal port fees applied to the U.S. shipping sectors. The meeting, the first between the leaders in 6 years, also seemed to provide a key opportunity for both heads of states to highlight their interest in stabilizing the tense relationship between the two countries. And under the deal, China agreed to defer its planned export control on rare earth, while the U.S. will drop a threatened 100% tariff on Chinese goods. President Trump said he would also lower a 20% fentanyl-related tariff to 10% after Xi Jinping agreed to work very hard to stem flows of the synthetic opiate. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also, we invite you to join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.